Welcome to the Leadership Equation. My name is Roger Francis and I'm the host of the Leadership Equation. And for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with teams across various industries and with leaders across different industries. When I had a leader once tell me specifically that you need to constantly be a student of the business and constantly look to learn and to grow. And that's my whole hope and desire, and why I launched this podcast, is that we could continue to learn and grow from leaders across various industries, specifically around how do we drive performance today and into tomorrow. At the end of the day, performance matters, results matter. And I'm a strong believer that the leadership equation is how we deliver sustained results. That IQ plus EQ deliver sustainable results for organizations as they move through dynamic marketplaces, increasing competition, and a higher rate of consumerism. I am pleased to welcome our next guest to the Leadership Equation, and that's Mr. Mark Griffin. Mark is the Executive Vice President and CHRO of BJ's Wholesale Club. Now, I got to tell you a story, Mark, okay? Well, first of all, Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Roger. It's great to be here, and I can't wait to hear this story.
Well, this story goes a long way, my friend, and it has stuck with me for years, and I'll never, ever, ever forget this story. You may remember back in 2006, and it was the California acquisition when we both worked at CVS. And you had come out to California to meet with me as we thought about recruiting strategies for pharmacists because there was such a huge shortage of them. And we sat across from each other at breakfast and we're talking shop. And this was our first meeting together. It was really our first sit down. And I had gotten the call from the Relo company at the same time that, do you remember this?
I do.
I got a call from the recruiting company at the same exact time that we were having breakfast. And you must have read the look on my face, but it was a look of concern. And the Relo company was giving me my buyout for my house that was in Canada at the time. And keep in mind, you know, I was 26 years old and Pierce was just born and Tiffany had agreed to move to California as part of this first relocation that we had done. And the buyout was probably $50,000 short. And I had already scraped everything I can to put a down payment on a California house, okay? Because I had only been working for a few years. And Mark, I will never forget this, and I'll always be grateful for what you did. You didn't just take a note. You quickly picked up the phone, made a call to I don't know who, but said, we'll take care of this for Roger and his family. And buddy, I have never, ever, ever forgotten that. And I could tell you that that committed me even more to the organization. And we've been friends ever since, and I can't thank you enough. So I wanted to tell you that. I don't know if I've ever formally told you that, but thank you very much, bud.
Thank you for telling me that story. I do recall that, but it was not the highlight of our visit. I'll tell you what I think it was in a minute. Listen, I did that because one, it's my job. Two, I care about you, even though we first met. You were clearly an important leader of the company. And the other thing is, you know, as you think about it, I don't want you worrying about your move. I want you to making an impact. I want you to make an impact on the business as quickly as possible. And so, to the extent that I can take that problem away from you and have you focus on our customers, our patients, and your team, the better. So, but what I recall from that, because I was just doing my job, but what I really loved, and you know, you think about the IQ versus the EQ, which we're going to talk about in a minute. You and I would walk into other pharmacies, and you would walk right up to the pharmacists from a recruiting perspective, and you showed me how it happens out on the street. And you would walk right up And what really hit me is pharmacists from other companies knew you and they knew who you were. And you've obviously been in their stores more than once. They already trusted you. You weren't their leader, you weren't part of their organization, but there was this inherent trust that you had with them. And some actually said, Roger, I see you more than I see my own district leader. And that really spoke volumes to me. I'll never forget that in terms of, the boldness, but the connection and influence you had over people that didn't even report to you and that weren't even part of the organization. So that was my highlight of our visit. But thank you for sharing yours as well.
Well, we both had memorable highlights, and I'm glad that our relationship has continued over the years. And first of all, congratulations on your success and your ascension, your constant evolution in your role and your contributions to the organizations that you've worked for. Mark, I think one of the things that would be helpful for the audience is to share your journey in leadership. We got a lot of leaders out there that are aspiring leaders that want to do more and want to climb the ladder, but may not have the clarity and or the confidence to be able to take that step. Would you mind sharing with the audience, your story, your journey?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to do that. And it truly is a journey. I would say right out of the gate that you don't learn it overnight. You don't learn it at your first job. You're never an expert. I'm still learning today how to be a better leader. So clearly is a journey. Right out of college, I was in an operations leadership role, and I had 16 hourly operational workers working for me. And I stepped into that role. They were all much older than me. They knew their trade very well. And I was brought in to lead that team and to make them better and to get more performance and productivity out of this team. Well, they didn't know who I was. They knew they were with the company a long time. And they're like, who's this 21-year-old kid coming in? And what I had to figure out very quickly was not how to do their job better, but bring what I can bring to the table. And that is understanding them, bringing a sense of empathy, helping them become better at what they're doing and adding value from that perspective. And you have to gain trust. And once I gained their trust, they found this value that I could provide them that was not unlocked before. And that's what really got me jazzed up about leadership. Went on to work for Fleet Bank. I would suggest there that was such a great opportunity. We did a ton of acquisitions, and I think meeting new people and helping to influence a company that is being integrated or joining your company was one of those opportunities that I just learned again through the job, on the job, drinking from the fire hose on how to influence people that may not want to do what they need to do to kind of integrate as a company. And then finally, CVS Health, 18 years, just a great opportunity to understand the retail part of the business, understand the healthcare side of the business. And as my scope increased, obviously the size of teams increased. And then how do you think about really leading and motivating your direct reports that could then lead others? So it's leading people that actually lead others. And that's a journey that I'm still on here at BJ's Wholesale Club. And it's the best part of what I do at work.
Yeah, that's a fantastic journey, and 18 years with CVS, obviously where we met. I was 19 and a half years with CVS, and there's been a lot of lessons along the way. I love what you just said, is that it's a constant journey. It's a constant evolution. I tell the boys all the time, you need to learn, unlearn, and relearn, and I think that goes for leaders every single day, because you're learning something new every single day, and how do you apply it in a way that makes sense to what your team needs. Now, listen, I know, because I got scars from my leadership journey, and I know that you have scars from your leadership journey, that it's not always a easy road. There are bumps along the way. There are lessons that are learned. What would you say your largest lesson that you've learned along the way, that if you could go back to your younger self and advise, or more importantly, how would you advise this audience around some of the lessons, some of the bumps and bruises that you've had along the way that have shaped how you think today?
Well, that's a great question, Roger. And I would, two things come to mind. One would be, you're working with good people, you're hiring good people, let them do their job. I think I have kind of stepped in, and when things were going the wrong way, of course, you always have to get in the weeds at times, but I think as a new leader, I would help do the job versus help lead the job and lead the individual. And so I think it's more of coaching versus doing. And that's something that I had to learn how to transition to. I would naturally jump in and take the reins, and you got to kind of coach through it, because when you coach through it, you build longer term sustainability and performance of your team. And then the other thing that comes to mind is having a strong point of view and using it. And don't be afraid to. Even if you're new in role and it's your first job out of college, or if you've been in the workforce for 30 years, if you don't feel that you can have a point of view, and if you're not speaking your point of view in a confident way, then you're missing an opportunity. And because, everybody has something that is important to hear. And I think it's the people that decide not to speak up and not to have a strong point of view that don't make an impact on an organization.
I often say to the teams that I've had the pleasure of leading is, congratulations, you have a seat at the table. Okay? Yeah. And you actually risk your seat and being replaced when you choose not to speak your points of view. Because I think the team benefits from all points of view. And you need to be able to share it so that the team could learn and grow from it. Now, there are leaders, as I think about today's workforce, it's changing dramatically. And for the first time ever, we have 4 different generations in the workforce. You think about back to the day where my dad was in the business as a baby boomer. It was easier, maybe I should say it that way, where to take what the boss says and just implement it. And yet today you have different needs across different generations. How do you see the workforce changing, and what are the requirements that you see leaders needing today that they may have not needed yesterday?
I think that the workforce has always been changing, to your point. Is it changing more rapidly now? Maybe not. But, likely with AI, it's going to continue to change at an even more rapid pace. I think what leaders need to do, and what good leaders have always done, is be open to understanding what's important and the needs of your team. Listen to them. Be empathetic. Put yourself in their shoes and have their back. We spend more time at work than we do usually with our families during the week. And how do you build that family environment that's trusting, that people feel that as a leader, you have their back? And when you have that and you support them and understand what they might be going through at home, and you make it work for them, that builds an incredible amount of loyalty and performance and dedication. And I think you just need to be open and understand, and not be closed-minded to new ways of thinking. New generations come in with their perception of how fast they should move up in the organization, or the next promotion, or what they think their work-life balance should be. Understanding that and working with people, certainly providing your point of view, is what makes it work. I think closing down on that with legacy opinions and thought processes is not the right way to handle that.
You said something that I want to pull on a little bit, because I think this is a balance between 2 systems at play. And I explain it, at least it makes sense to me, okay? That there's a capital system and then there's a human system in business. And the capital system is the system around performance. It's timelines, it's performance, it's metrics, it's KPIs. And then there's the human performance in terms of that takes that strategy set by the capital system and makes it happen through the human system. What's the right way of thinking about balancing the 2 systems? Because you could see in a world where, Results matter, and pressure is on to deliver, whether to the shareholders or to the street. But how do leaders balance between the two?
You have to, or you're not going to have sustained performance. So I would argue that you certainly, from a capital perspective, you can influence results and get good or excellent results on a short-term basis. You can muscle through. You can do it with a few smart people without really aligning the team or having a good work environment. But it's not sustainable. When you add the people aspect to it, companies that have sustained results over time are because the people are motivated, they're engaged, they're risk-taking, they're innovative, and that's what drives the long-term equation. Speaking about equations, Roger, I took the equation that you had in your book around performance, and performance equals capability times commitment times environment. And I think that talks exactly to the question you just asked. Performance can be short-term driven by short-term thinking and results. But when you add kind of people capability, human capability, the commitment of your team, and then the environment, a very strong work environment, that equals long-term performance and not short-term results based on kind of, quick decisions that aren't embedded in the human capital part of the business.
There's a popular word being used, and I'd love your thoughts around this popular word, and that's psychological safety. Okay, a lot of organizations are talking about it, but then when pressure is on, that innovation, that creativity, that openness to hear what the team is saying only occurs in the right environment to your equation. From your seat at the table as a CHRO, how should organizations, how should leaders, how should other human resource leaders think about creating environments where psychological safety is considered an important characteristic or an important aspect of the environment?
Well, I think that the first thing to do is don't talk about it from a label perspective. Don't say, hey, we as a company, have a strong psychological safety component and it's important to us. Words don't matter when it comes to this. It's actions. So don't label it. Don't necessarily do it. It is incredibly important to do it. And the only way people are going to understand that, and they're not going to remember the definition of psychological safety, they're going to know how it felt. They're going to know what it means when they took a calculated risk and they failed. Did the organization come down hard on them? Were they rewarded for taking a risk, albeit it didn't work? Did they fail fast and cheap, and did they move on? That's how you drive innovation. Without that safety factor and support behind a team member or an employee, you douse that innovation, right? I mean, think about 3M, think about Apple, think about those companies that are very innovative. If they did not support people who failed, they wouldn't have the innovations that they do today. And I think that it's so easy to come down and point fingers on a failure, whether it's a process or it's a person who decided a particular thing. Now, again, it has to be calculated and it has to be thoughtful. But on the other hand, that's I think what's very important. And then when it comes to, what's important for a team member to succeed, to feel that they can, work at home when needed, or if their family priority comes up, that the company's behind them. Well, in my experience, those team members only add more value, work harder, work smarter, and actually are more innovative because they're willing to take risks, knowing that you as an organization have proven time and time again, when it's during COVID and you needed to protect and take care of the team, whether it's in times of tough performance for the company, if the company had a tough quarter, all those times, it's easy to talk about psychological safety when things go well, but it's hard to do it under times of stress when things aren't going well. And that's when you build your credibility, is when things get going, when things get tough, you still are there to support and have the backs of your team, and think long term, because the long term output of that is going to create an amazing impact to performance long term if you do that well.
Has there been a point in time in your career where you didn't feel safe enough or comfortable enough to be able to use your voice the way you wanted to use your voice? And how did you handle it? How did you overcome it? Because that's a real point, right? Like, if I know in my career, there has been points like that where I didn't feel safe enough to be able to voice my opinions, always wondering what others are thinking based off of what I said. And it always put me on guard where I didn't show up with my best self.
It's happened to me, of course, just like it's happened to you. And I would suggest, if it hasn't happened to anyone in the audience, it will happen at some point. From my perspective, it's all about the leader. Okay. If someone else in the organization is making you feel that way, but your leader has your back and allows you to safely talk about and express your point of view, then it all works out. But if it's your leader that's the one that is holding you back, does not value your point of view, does not, support you taking risks in either how you think of things, your actions, or even just your stated point of view, that's a big problem. And I think that's why a lot of people leave. That's a tough one to solve because, in many cases, you're not going to change your leader. Certainly, you need to be open and honest. You need to have those behind the door, closed door discussions with your leader about how you feel about this. I think you can still influence others in the organization besides your direct leader. But that's a tough one because either you move out from that leader or the leader needs to change through the feedback that you provide upward. And that doesn't always happen. So I think that's a big problem that companies have when they have a leader in a senior role that creates that environment. The trickle down negative implications can become really big, really fast.
I think that goes back to one of the Sen Delaney concepts that we studied in our previous company in terms of the shadow of the leader. And I guess for the audience listening in, your shadow casts very far. Okay, and it's not just within the first ripple in the lake, if you will. It goes further than that, and I think that's an important lesson. And if you haven't been in that situation, I'll guarantee it, as you grow into higher roles, you're going to experience it. And just take it from me and Mark, based off of his experience, that it will happen. Mark, earlier on you mentioned technology and you mentioned AI. And there's organizations out there, and almost every organization is trying to figure out how to use AI. There's almost a little bit of FOMO about being late to the game on AI. But this is where organizations have so much data today, so much information. And I think actually AI is going to close the intelligence gap because it's able to absorb so much information and based off of the input, deduce what are key possibilities. How do you see technology, specifically AI, and EQ working together to optimize results? Because I think organizations are saying, we have invested so much in our strategy, we've refined our processes, we've invested in the tech debt that we had, but we're still not delivering our results.
One of the reasons why I was so excited to talk to you, Roger, today is, as you outline it in your book, it kind of hits a chord with me. It's not that IQ is less important or EQ is more important. You can argue, I would say, that EQ is becoming more important, but it's the integration of both of them that makes the winning factor. And yes, AI is consolidating the data with all those streams of data that you mentioned. AI to me is a tool. It's a very sophisticated tool. It's a tool unlike anything we've had before, but it's still a tool and humans need to use them. Humans need to decide where you're going to focus from a priority perspective, how you're going to use it, how you're going to change the organization, how are you going to get the organization to adopt to something that might be scary? So you could have the best AI agentic agents or other tools within AI, but not have an organization willing and ready and feel safe to use it and adopt it. You're not going to succeed in the new environment. So I think it's the marrying of the two, and I think that the IQ becomes a little bit more less of data analysis and more of understanding the data that can come together and be formed with AI tools and how to think about it more strategically. So I think there's a great opportunity from an IQ perspective. And from an EQ perspective, again, it's building that infrastructure of talent. So the skill sets might change. It's rewarding people for taking a chance and using new technology. And it's prioritizing. I mean, there's so much you can do, whether it's productivity advancements, whether it's on the commercial side for your customers and how they're interacting with AI, whether it's helping them pick products or buy products. You got to decide what you're going to do. And companies can't do everything at once. And so, from an EQ perspective, I think it's influencing and it's deciding where the priority is for the organization and being really good at those few things out of the gate. And then, of course, expand as you go.
That point around prioritization, again, I just go back to the pressures of every organization out there, right? The pressure is to deliver. And every quarter, a public company has to deliver. Okay, and even if it's a private company, the shareholders or the investment organization, the equity partner needs to see results. So I think that that's an important balance to be able to hit just right. It's that sweet spot around doing both. You talk through development of leaders, and I've obviously developed quite a bit over the 25 plus years. And I can remember stories of, when I graduated pharmacy school, I was on the 8th hole with my buddies playing around the golf. My brother called me up and he's like, "Congratulations, you got your license." And he was just checking the Michigan Board of Pharmacy website for me. And I remember saying to myself, actually, I said to my friends, I said, "I'm going to go to work." I picked up a shift that night. I was so excited to go to work. And on the way to work, I remember saying to myself, "I'm done learning." And if I could go back to that time and smack myself, I'd smack myself, to be honest with you, because you're never really done learning. And I think organizations are in a phase right now where they're learning around the capabilities needed to lead into tomorrow. You see, most organizations, we used to promote people based off of the results that they had. How do you think through promotions as people want to grow in the organizations that they work? You said it earlier. The generation that's coming out is probably less patient and wants to go fast. But how do you advise around the capabilities needed to actually lead today? Because we've seen promotions in the past where they have delivered great results, but when they get to that next leadership position, it stalls out. How would you advise of that, Mark?
Well, I think as you go north in the organization, leadership and the EQ side of it just becomes greater because the impact is greater in terms of the teams. I think it's hard for someone starting off in their career to gain that leadership experience when they don't have anybody to lead. And that's something that is critical for an organization to kind of make happen, either through org design or org structures or temporary assignments. And I think from what I really focus on and try to teach is that when I look at my own career, it was not a straight line from left to right going up. It zigzagged and plateaued and went up again and plateaued. And when I think about those plateau points, that's when I moved laterally. And I gained the majority of my lifelong learning, like you mentioned it, kind of my experience through those lateral moves because you gain broader breadth of the business and experience. You also meet new people, you lead new people, you have that experience that helps drive the EQ side of the business. You can't learn that in a textbook. You could certainly read about it, but you don't get it until you're doing it and doing it in good times and tough times and having tough discussions and also good discussions and helping influence people. You can't influence people by reading a book. You have to influence people face to face. And so, what I try to help people understand is that don't think of your next step as always has to be the higher grade, the more pay, the next promotion. Think of the value of lateral moves that get you ready for the next step, and then think of lateral moves again. And I would bet that the majority of leaders in very senior roles or CEO roles have had the majority of their moves have been lateral versus upward, but that has given them the foundation and the experience to learn. Then I think as an organization, we have to help define what it means to get to the next level. What is a VP or an SVP need to do? How do they operate from a leader perspective? What thinking has to change as you're in a broader role? And that's tough because it's less technical, it's less black and white, and it's more gray and it's more leadership. And I think an organization that can define the leadership traits and provide experiential opportunities are the ones that help people get to the next level quicker.
I said earlier that I learn something new every day. Okay. I look to wake up every morning and learn something new. And what you said about the lateral moves, I've never seen that in my career. Like I've done them, but I never really thought of it that way. And, I've been in positions where people want to move, they want to go up, but they don't accept the lateral moves. They want the next piece on the resume. So I think that's valuable insights to all the aspiring leaders that want to do more at whatever position you're at. I think Mark just gave a very valuable piece of feedback in terms of open up your aperture, learn more about the business, go a little bit wider so that when you get to that level, you have a full panoramic, if you will, around the business. Mark, I think that's excellent advice, and I thank you very much for sharing that. There's one thing that I think of that in your seat is paramount to the success of the strategy, and it's paramount to the success of people within that strategy, and that's org design, org structure. I think we've been in organizations where we're trying to deliver a new strategy with the same org structure. And I'd love your perspective of how you think about org structure and strategy being one and the same, that ultimately not only delivers results, but also delivers the talent that you need to take those results and bring them to life.
They clearly are aligned. And I think that if you think about org structure and you make a change to the org structure, it's never one and done. Okay. I know you have to be careful of how many changes to the organization can a company kind of handle at any one given time. But in terms of thinking about it and thinking strategically, not just near term, but longer term on what the org structure needs to look like has to happen all the time. It never ends. When there's a new strategy, it's an obvious point in time in which you think about the org structure. But as companies continue to grow and morph in their kind of a performance curve, the current strategy is very likely not going to be the strategy that exists in the future. Take AI, that's a catalyst that is causing a lot of leaders to think about org design. And it's got to help enable people to be their best selves. So there's what's the right organization structure for the company and the strategy. But also when you look at the leaders and you look at their talent, structuring the organization in a way that aligns people to their strengths allows people to have a much better outcome, move faster, and much better results. That's not easy to do because there's a balance between, organizing for the broader good of a company versus understanding individual strengths and making sure you align them to their strengths. But that's a balance that I think is very important, and it's a balance that will continue to happen. And then finally, with AI, org structures need to include non-humans, if you will. I mean, there's the org structure of humans, and then who's managing agents, and how does that structure look? What's the span of control? How do you teach leaders to manage humans and agents in a way that's effective and integrated? And I could say that we're all learning that as we go, but that's, I think, an important factor going forward.
All right, so Mark, winding down here, what gets you excited? Okay, aside from the Patriots, okay, and the Bruins and that stuff, what gets you excited about the future of organizations, the future of leadership? That if you had a crystal ball, you pulled it out, what would you look into?
Well, I think it's a few things. First of all, what excites me personally is growth, the growth of a company, and the growth of the company I'm in now. We're really excited about the future from a growth standpoint. And I've been growth oriented my whole career, and that's really, really exciting. The second thing is the people I work with. They get me excited to come to work. I love coming to work. I love the peer team at the executive level. I love my team. I love walking our clubs and meeting the great people we have that work with our members every day. And I think what excites me long term, and it should excite everybody, is this adaptation and new world we're in, and how we need to think differently with AI. I don't think we need to be consumed by AI, but I think we need to focus on it. It's a great opportunity to do things better, faster. It's a great tool that can enable better customer service, better customer experiences, and it could help companies outperform their competitors if done the right way. There's risk there. Is it scary? Yeah, it's a little scary, but I think what excites me is the art of the unknown yet, and the opportunity that's there. You could either win or lose in this new AI world, and I think the companies that embrace it with both arms and jump into it, and encourage risk taking, and reward people and stand behind them. I think it's a great time to be in an innovative company. So that's kind of how I would frame it up, Roger.
Congratulations on again your success and the organization's success. One of the things that struck a chord was the fact that the mindset that you have and the organization has is on growth. And some organizations have been in business for a long time that they naturally find themselves on playing defense versus offense. And there are leaders within that organizations that say, okay, hold on a second. We have to defend what we need to defend, but we need to grow ultimately to deliver the P&L and differentiation. Any advice that you could give from your seat or your input around how does an organization start to think about playing more offense than defense?
I like to think of a phrase. I'm sure you've heard it. I'm sure the audience has heard it, but play to win, don't play not to lose. So if you're playing not to lose, then you are in essence playing defense. Playing to win, you have a different thought process. You've got to innovate, and again, you've got to get excited as a team, and everybody has to be aligned around it. Roger, that's what I would say. There was a great article that recently came out from the Harvard Business Review that talked about alignment of top teams, and they talked to a lot of teams that nodded their head and recited the new strategy or the direction of the company. And they all said that, yes, the senior team was aligned. And, when the researchers dug into it, when tough decisions had to be made and actions had to be taken, they really weren't aligned. And I think that alignment is critical, and getting everybody moving in the right direction with a purpose and with a focus and with excitement, I think is the winning recipe to grow and to play to win versus play not to lose.
Mark Griffin, I can't thank you enough for the years of friendship advice. And not only do I do podcasting on the side, I'm also a BJ's member. So, okay, so that... I love the clubs. I love the clubs. That was back in the days when I was up in the Northeast in Rhode Island, but I know you guys are expanding aggressively as well. So, Mark, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast and talking about the importance of IQ and EQ integrating the right way to drive sustainable performance. So, Mark, I wish you well. I can't thank you enough for always being a big part of my career and my aspirations.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks for having me. I also learned a lot from you along the way that I will always remember. And congratulations on the book and your career, which has been amazingly successful. So all the best to you as well.
Thanks, my friend.